guys, and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a May wrap-up. I know it's kind of late, but I wasn't sure if I was even going to record this because it was kind of a rough reading month. I did read 10 books, but they just, I don't know, I just wasn't really that impressed with what I read last month. And I also had 2 DNFs, so I didn't know if I really wanted to talk about them. But I decided I might as well. It's fun recording these wrap-ups, and it kind of keeps it so I know my own thoughts and kind of get them out there. If you hear loud noises, probably like what you're hearing right now, my dishwasher is currently running. And my kitchen is like right next to the library, so yeah, you're probably gonna have to hear that for the whole video, but oh well. Like I said, read 10 books. I think I did have 2 or 3 5 stars. I have not looked at my ratings since I started recording this, which, you know, would have been probably good preparation, but, you know, this was kind of spur of the moment. Oh well. I'm glad I honestly found all the books because I couldn't find a couple for a while. That was another reason I wasn't going to do it, is I've just been really scatterbrained this month. So anyway, I found all of them. We're going to talk about them. And you know what? Let's just get into it. First, we're going to go over the books that I DNF'd. Now, one of them is a hard DNF. I'm getting rid of the book, never picking it up again. Yikes. The other one is a soft DNF. It's going to go back into my closet. I need to name my book closet something because books go in there and then you don't see them ever again. But I'll explain why it's going to go in there. So first, let's talk about the hard DNF. The first book that I attempted to read in May actually was my DNF, and that is Siren Queen. I'm not even gonna try and say her name. But this was my most anticipated book of the month book for May. So I was so mad that I got halfway through this tiny book. It's a tiny book. And I hated it. I hated it so much that I could not stand to read another page. It was so bad. I even made like a reading plan. I was gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna read 20 pages today, 20 pages tomorrow, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't even do that. So this book has everything in it that I would like. It is about a woman who wants to break into Hollywood, and it's like old school Hollywood. I have this like one gnat that's been flying around my house for days, and it's driving me nuts. Woman wants to break into Hollywood, lower income family. Not much hope of it, but she just happens to be in the neighborhood, like nearby when they're filming stuff, so she's able to get like an extra scene and stuff, so she is able to break into Hollywood, but it's magical realism. I'm normally okay with magical realism. I was not okay with the magical realism in this. It was too much, too confusing. I had no idea what was going on half the time. I thought a lot of it, for probably about a third of the book that I read, I thought it was like all metaphors. And then by halfway through the book, I realized that no, everything is actually happening. It's just really weird. So I couldn't get over the weirdness. If you are cool with super weird stuff, super, super in-depth magical realism and old school Hollywood, you'll probably love this. This one was just not for me, and I'm going to pass it on to a friend who maybe likes this a little bit better. So the next book was also a book of the month book, and this is my soft DNF, and it is The Change by Kirsten Miller. This was one of those books that you kind of pick up thinking, oh, like this could be really good. It's not my normal genre that I read, but it sounds really cool. And everyone loved this book. It has rave reviews everywhere. Yeah, I got about 2 chapters in, and again, was not for me. So this book is about a group of middle-aged women who are going through difficult times in their lives, and suddenly they come into these like powers. So it's kind of like a metaphor for menopause, the change. And basically they get a bunch of powers and stuff goes on, etc. So the book opens up with them talking about HOAs and just generic stuff, and I don't like my HOA, so it kind of triggered me a little bit. They're a pain in the butt, and it kind of just like put me immediately off this book, and I'm just like, oh gosh, I already have to deal with them, and I don't want to read about it either. They're such a pain. And this reminded me a lot of how mine is, like nitpicking every little thing. Like my house is probably one of the most like well kept in our neighborhood, and we got a letter saying that we had like a tiny patch of like green on the side of our house. So we ended up having to power wash like our entire house, and that's expensive. If you've never power washed a house, it's expensive if you hire someone to do it. So I see, I'm going off about it. It's just it made me so mad. So the people in this book reminded me of the people in my HOA just at the beginning. So I literally only made it 2 chapters in, and I was just like, I'm so done with this. I'm so done with it, because we were just dealing with the HOA. So this is a soft DNF because it was a stupid reason to put it down. So it's going into the closet. I'm gonna forget about it for a year or 2 and then pull it out and see if I can change my immediate perspective on it. So this is a DNF for no other reason than I was just not in the mood to deal with it at the time. Okay, so now we're gonna be getting into books that I actually did finish, even though I may not have liked them. I do have a couple books that probably well, not a couple. I have 1 or 2 books that should have been DNFs, but I just pushed through it because I hate DNFing books. I get it from my mom. My mom, if she buys a book, she finishes it. End of story. She gets mad at me when I tell her I DNF a book, and I'm 30. She's like, no, you have to finish it. You bought it, you have to finish it. So, so I get that from her. But how we're gonna do this is we're gonna go from least favorite to favorite. That way we finish it on a nice note and get the bad ones out of the way. So the first one that we're gonna be talking about is Hide by Kiersten White. So I have a book review up for this. Currently, I just put it out. Oh, I don't know when this video is coming out. So this came out at some point, and it kind of turned into a rant. I did not rate this book. I explained why I didn't rate it in that video, so if you want to know more about this book, go to that. This book is basically a adult horror book about a group of young adults who are invited to partake in a hide-and-seek game that they supposedly win $50,000 if they're the winner. So that's all I'm going to say. It's a very, very, very short book. So you can get it through it really quickly. It's written well. It wasn't for me. Again, I explain why in the video, so go watch that review. So yeah, I wouldn't say this is my least favorite book of the month, but it was one of them. The next book that we're going to be talking about is Darling Girl by Liz Mikowski. And this is another one I have a review about. So again, if you want a more in-depth look at this book, go to that review. I like doing book reviews. I'm able to get my thoughts out on these books and kind of like detox from them, so I don't have to bother my husband with every detail about it. So yeah, if you want more details, go look at that. But basically, Darling Girl is a Peter Pan dark retelling that follows the like great granddaughter of Wendy, and you find out that Peter Pan is not exactly what you think that he is. The one thing I'll say about this book, first of all, I hated it. It's 2 stars. Probably should be 1. Probably should have DNF'd it. This is the book that I probably should have DNF'd. But it was just intriguing enough to keep me reading, which is why it got a 2. Again, should have been a 1. But I will say, if you like Peter Pan a lot, don't read it. You will not like this, because the portrayal of Peter Pan is dark. If you like Peter Pan but also like retellings and aren't afraid of seeing Peter Pan in a bad light, I think you probably actually really like this. This would probably be really good for someone who's really into Peter Pan but also really into retellings, standalone things. So that's kind of my recommendations for it. Otherwise, it's mediocre for people who don't really have an allegiance either way. I don't really like Peter Pan, so I thought this would be a safe pick. I just didn't like anything else in it. Like, I didn't really care about Peter Pan being bad or whatever. It didn't bother me. What bothered me was the rest of the book. Again, talk about it more in the book review, so go check that out. Next book is Loathe at First Sight. This is a random pickup that my husband picked out for me at the bookstore. So sometimes if I don't know what to get at a bookstore, I'll look at my husband and be like, go pick me out a random book, and I'll give like him sections to go pick out from. So I really wanted a romance book, and I was like, okay, go pick me out a random romance. That way I don't have time to look it up on Goodreads. I don't have a preformed idea of what the book's gonna be like. So I just buy it and I read it without, tainting my thoughts about it. This book actually did not do well on Goodreads, and I can see why. So I gave this book a 3 stars. It's basically about an Asian American woman who works for a video game company, and she switched careers late in life. So first of all, she doesn't get a lot of respect at the company for that, and then she also doesn't get a lot of respect because she's a woman, and they are so sexist. It's, ooh, I know a lot of workplaces are like this. I've been in a workplace that's kind of like this, not this extreme, but it was over the top. I mean, it was aggressively sexist and uncomfortable, and it was kind of weird to be this aggressive in a romance. Also, I couldn't stand her parents. There was just a lot in it that I didn't like, that I don't like in my romances, and they kind of tried to make it lighthearted harassment, which doesn't really work. And the romance didn't work at first. I did give it a 3. I ended up liking it towards the end. It definitely like laid off the really bad stuff that started at the beginning and cooled off. And the end was really cool. Like, I like all the changes that happened at the end. But I would not recommend this to most people. If you, I don't even know who, honestly, I don't know who I would recommend this to. It was fine. There are many other romances I would prefer to read and recommend, so I would say pass on this one. It was okay. Yeah, that's pretty much all I gotta say. It was fine. The next book that I read was To Kill a Kingdom. Gosh, this has been on my TBR for forever. This may be the book that I haven't read the longest on my shelves. Like, I have plenty of older books that I read, but this one's been on my shelf for a very long time, and I had not read it, and I picked it up at the same time as Daughter of the Pirate King. I went through a pirate phase that I picked up a bunch of pirate books and then never read them. So I picked this one up, and I was like, this has such good ratings. So I was like, okay, let's finally read it. Let's get it off the shelf. And it was fine. I don't see really the hype. Again, maybe if I read it a few years ago when I got it, I would have really, really liked it. But there's just so many other books out there that I liked a lot better. So this book is about a siren princess who every year kills a prince on her birthday. And basically she's trying to work up to be the Siren Queen, and all the sirens fear the siren slayer guy who's also a prince. There's a lot of princes and princesses and death and anger, and I don't know, I don't even know how else to describe it. It's a pirate book. It's a pirate book about a siren and a pirate prince, and they go on a journey and they fall in love. I mean, it's very generic. It's very generic. It's interesting. It's okay. I give it a 3.75. I don't know if I said earlier, but I'm very generous with my ratings. This probably is more of a 3, but because I had moments that I liked, I give it a 3.75. And I think I rounded it up on Goodreads maybe. I don't know. It was fine. It was fine. The next 2 books that I read are some of my more disappointing ones. Pick up a sci-fi book or series, I have to be like super excited about the premise. And so when I picked up these 2 books, again, was very excited about the premise, and unfortunately they were just okay. And I don't know if it's because I don't love sci-fi that much, or I just wasn't vibing with the characters, because I really didn't vibe with the main character that much. But I was really disappointed in that, because I was really excited about these. But it is the Crownchaser duology. Love the covers. I love the idea. So Crownchasers follows our main character, who is a princess. I read a lot of princess books. Whose uncle just died, and she gets thrown into a competition for the crown that she doesn't want. So instead of just having her next in line to become princess or queen, whatever, empress, I think it's empress of the universe, they decide to hold a competition instead, so that all of like the big families, their kids, can partake in this, and whoever wins the competition becomes emperor or empress. That is the premise of this. I thought it sounded great. I love stuff that has games in it. They're normally my favorite books. But my goodness, the main character is so annoying. I almost DNF'd this a few times because of how annoying she is. It got a lot better, But man, she had moments that I just want to smack her in the face. She was being such a jerk. I did give it a 3.5. Most of the points were taken off because of her. There was a giant fly just flying around. I hate things that fly. Oh my gosh. So anyway, I gave this 3.5. And again, like I said, most of it was because of her. So the second book was really cool. I got it from, I don't remember who the company is. I'll link them down below. I think it's Bookish Signs. I don't know. I'll link it down below. They have an Etsy and an Instagram. So I'll link it down below so you guys can check them out. But they have like, not scratch and dent copies, but where they mess up like the sprayed edges. So I think this is, yeah, I had like a bunch of bleeding in it. So it was discounted. And then there's like a little bit of like messed up there, but you can't even tell. So I was like, yeah, I'll take it. It was like $10 cheaper than normal. So I was like, heck yeah. So anyway, this just continues on in the story and it's fine. I really can't say anything about what the story's about, but it just continues on her story. She's, again, kind of annoying in this, gets better towards the end. I gave it a 3.5. They're just average books. That's pretty much all I have to say. If you are really into sci-fi, you might actually like these, but since I'm not, they're just okay. I'd rather pick up a fantasy book that's average than a sci-fi book that's average. Okay, we are down to now my favorite books of this month, and I think 3 of the 4 are book of the month books. Normally, my book of the month books I either love or I hate. So, and I feel like that held true for May. Either I loved the books that I got or I DNF'd or hated them. So, that's kind of sad. And that makes me really nervous for my June books. I just got my June books and I think I got 3, but I'll talk about it in the next video. I haven't done a haul in a really long time. You know what? I just realized that I actually read one more book and I just didn't write it on like my list. I'll go ahead and talk about that one right now. And I will pop it up on the screen because I don't feel like going to get it, but it is The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, and I love that book. I gave it a 4. Again, I did a review on that one because I absolutely love that book and only got a 4 because I wish there was a duology. I feel like there was more they could have expanded on, more relationships they could have expanded on. In my heart, it's probably a 5. It was a beautiful book. That's pretty much all that I have to say about it. The next one that we're going to be talking about is Breathless. I loved this book. I know this was pretty controversial about who liked it. People either thought it was super, super, super boring or loved it, and I was definitely in the I loved it category. I think I gave it a 4. Again, in my heart, it's more of a 5. But I understand the problems with it, which is why I gave it a 4, but it's a 5. So this is a thriller that takes place on oh gosh, I have a review on this and I talked about how I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's a mountain called Manaslu, and it's a 8,000er peak. And again, I go into all this mountain climbing stuff, but it's basically a really hard mountain to climb. It's part of like these 14 mountains in the Nepali region, Himalayan region, that alpinists go to climb and try and make a name for themselves in the alpine community. But it's fun. It's definitely a book that I would recommend to people who like slow burn thrillers, who maybe don't mind it being kind of obvious what happens at the end, and who like climbing. Because the author actually climbed this mountain, there are so many amazing details in this book. I personally watch documentaries on climbing all the time. I would never do it. That is not one of my interests to actually do it, but I'm fascinated by it. So is my husband. So we watched tons of stuff. So when I read this, loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was kind of like reading a documentary a little bit. There was a lot of stuff that I learned that I didn't know before. So highly recommend if you're into climbing and you like slow burn thrillers. Otherwise, if you like fast-paced thrillers, if you're more picky with your thrillers, you probably won't enjoy this because there are some problems with it. But I loved it. I gave it a 4. I had a great time with this book. The next book that I'm going to talk about is The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas. and this was a surprise for me. So, well, kind of. I was hoping it was like Mexican Gothic with the Gothic feels and the dark and heaviness. And yes, it was exactly what I wanted. I gave this a 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed this book. I read it really quickly. It's not a super short book. It's not a super long book either. It kind of falls in between. It's about 330 pages, so not super long, not super, super short. But it was just fun. It was very dark. I definitely had some moments where I was like creeped out, which I really want in my like Gothic horror books. So this is definitely, I'm really picky when it comes to calling something horror / thriller. I actually just read a book, Hidden Pictures, that I'm probably going to do a review about, that claims it's horror, but I definitely think falls more in the thriller category, which is probably why I liked it so much. This is definitely horror. Light horror. Like I said, Gothic horror to me is much lighter than regular horror. It's more psychological, it's more atmospheric. So if you like atmospheric horror books, this book is for you. It is about a woman who wants to escape the life that she currently has and provide for her mother, so she marries a rich man who has a hacienda, and so she goes and lives in his village, but things are not right in her home, and nobody wants to go there. There's this thick darkness that lays over the house, and you quickly find out that something is living there that probably shouldn't. And it's just so much fun. I will say warnings. If you are a devout Catholic or devout Christian, mostly Catholic. If you're a devout Catholic, you may have some problems with this. I don't want to ruin anything, but there is a priest in this book, and yeah, I don't. If you have problems with priests doing things that they're not supposed to be doing, you should not read this book, because it's going to make you upset. So that is my big like warning about this book. But otherwise, it is so much fun. I really enjoyed this book. I'm gonna look back on it fondly. If you like Mexican Gothic, you're gonna like this. If you didn't like Mexican Gothic, you might actually still like this, because to me this is quicker paced than Mexican Gothic was. Mexican Gothic was so slow. So I keep looking up because there is a bug crawling up my wall and it's freaking me out. What is going on? I think it's the fly from earlier. It looks like the fly. I just had my bug guy come and spray, because we live in the South where it's really hot, and if you don't know anything about the South, you can have the cleanest, nicest house, you're still gonna have like ants and unfortunately cockroaches. I've always been from the North, and I had never seen a cockroach before, and then I came here and we have like little tiny ones. Ugh. So I have someone come and spray every 3 months, because it's disgusting. It's so disgusting, and I hate it, and it ugh. So I think they're trying to escape the bug spray. Yeah, I don't know what that is. I don't know what it is. I'm gonna have to trap it later. My husband can kill it. Huh. Okay, I hate bugs. I hate bugs. I hate them. Anyway, love this book. Highly recommend. Like I said, like I was saying, if you didn't like Mexican Gothic, I think you'll still enjoy this. Much quicker pace. I think this is a really good one to try if you are new to like Gothic horror specifically. If you like hardcore horror, you probably won't like this. Anyway, 4 stars. Really, really enjoyed it. Fun read. Okay, we are down to my final 2 books, and both of these are 5 stars. So the next one we're going to be talking about is also a Book of the Month book, and it is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This was so cute. Oh my gosh. So I love romance books, but I'm more on the, I want to feel like I'm reading like a Hallmark book, not a smutty, super smutty. I don't mind some smut in my books, but I don't want every other page to be nasty. Like I have to have major romance in the book for them to also be smut. So this was, I really don't know if there was any smut in this actually, which is probably why I liked it so much. I'm definitely more of a clean reader than a smutty reader. So if you read for smut, this is probably not the book for you. But if you like clean books that are super, super focused on romance and feel really rather realistic, I would read this. If you like Hallmark movies, I would definitely read this. This was like a warm hug in a book. There were some really hard topics that they talked about. Like, so it's basically about a woman who is in a very demanding job, and her family is absolutely horrible and expects so much from her, and she kind of just needs an escape. So she meets a man from, let's say you can see, so she's from the city, he's from a little county town. So she goes to this county town and she meets him, and they end up forming a kind of relationship, and she uses it basically as an escape from her super stressful life, and she finds herself wanting to go back to this town more and more. And it's just so lovely and beautiful, and I was so happy already reading this book. And I think I read this book in one day, and it's like over 350 pages, and I just like zoomed through it because it was lovely. Highly recommend it. Love the female main character, love the male main character, loved it. There are some trigger warnings if you have issues with your family. They do have, the families are tough in this. Her family is tough in this. There are some trigger warnings for emotional abuse. So if you cannot handle anything that has abuse in it whatsoever, it's very, very light in this book, but it is still there. So warning about that. But otherwise, this is a 5-star. Love this book. Highly recommend it to anyone who likes romance. Chef's kiss. Loved it. And now, my star of the month. Oh boy, I can't wait to see what you guys think about this. It is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Again, another very controversial pick. But for me, this was, I mean, hands down the best thing I read this month. Loved it. I ate it up. It was amazing. So if you don't know by now, if you've been living under a rock, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue is about Addie LaRue, who is basically cursed to live forever, but no one remembers her, which is what makes life so difficult to live for so long. She introduces herself to a person, the person walks out of the room, comes back, they don't recognize her. So she can't write her name, she can't say her name, she can't make an imprint on the world that you know of. She kind of what I love about this book is I love her. I love Addie LaRue. She is a beautiful character and so conniving and so vibrant, and she just wants to live, and I loved this book. This is not a book for romance readers. I don't know how many times I have to say this. I actually have a book review about it. This is not a romance book. I think it was marketed incorrectly because a lot of people picked it up thinking it was a romance. This is not a romance. This is a character study about Addie LaRue and humanity as a whole and what humans can put themselves through to live. So for me, don't go into this thinking this is a romance. The romance is really not even that important. Yeah, that's kind of all I'm gonna say about it because I feel like it's spoilers. Otherwise, there's really not that many spoilers. It's pretty linear, like storytelling wise, but it's such a beautiful story. It is slow, but to me it was so worth it, and it was I absolutely love this book. This is an easy 5 stars. I wanted more. Like, I want her to do a spin-off series of Addie LaRue in the past, like do novellas of when she was like in this period during this time, this location during this time. Oh, that'd be so wonderful. So anyway, 5 stars. Love this book. I can't get enough of this book. I'll probably end up rereading it. It was so great. Yeah, Addie LaRue. Highly suggest. Mostly. I know a lot of people won't like this book, but I loved it. So that was my May wrap up. Those were all the books that I read in May. I had a couple of pretty good books. Unfortunately, not that many great ones, so I'm hoping that June is a lot better. June did just start, and I've already finished a 5-star that I absolutely loved, so it's really exciting, and I hope I'll get a review out for that book. Otherwise, like, comment, subscribe. I would love to hear what you guys think about the books that I read this month. Go check out those book reviews that I have for some of those books if you want to hear more about them. And yeah, that's it. So I will see you guys in the next video.